After watching this video, you will never be able to watch Home Alone in the same way ever again. That is because this actor was accused and then charged of the most horrific crimes. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is Devon Rattray. Devon Rattray began his career in acting when he was only 8 years old, and he managed to book small roles here and there. However, he would get his big break by starring in the 1990 film Home Alone, which in my opinion is one of the most iconic Christmas movies. Devon plays Buzz McAllister, Macaulay Culkin's tough older brother, and this role enabled Devon to have a very successful career in acting. He would go on to book several movies, series, and even started his own band. In December 2022, a then 45-year-old Devon was drinking in a bar in Oklahoma with his girlfriend when the two got into an explosive argument. So, two female fans had approached Devon and were very excited to meet him. They asked for his autograph, which he gave, and the argument with his girlfriend started was because Devon was fuming that she didn't charge the girls for the autographs. She didn't ask for money in exchange for his signature and the pleasure of meeting him. They would return back to their hotel room, and that is when Devon launched a near-fatal attack on his girlfriend. He threw her on the bed and told her, quote, "This is how you die." Using one hand, he began to strangle her, and using his other, he covered her mouth. She physically could not breathe. She would bite down on Devon's hand and began screaming for help, and that is when he began to punch her repeatedly in the face and body. Thankfully, his then girlfriend was able to slip away from him and run out of the hotel room begging for help. In February 2024, Devon pled guilty to the charges brought against him for this crime. This included charges of domestic assault and battery via strangulation. For this, he received a sentence of 3 years probation.
She threw a baby shower for her ex-boyfriend and her 12-year-old daughter. 35-year-old Desiree Gazzanetta had previously dated 24-year-old Juan Miranda Jara in Oklahoma. Even after the relationship ended, Desiree still allowed Juan to live inside of the home with her and her 12-year-old daughter. Over time, Juan became involved with the daughter, and Desiree knew what was going on. Instead of stepping in as a mother or contacting police, Desiree fully supported the relationship and even let the two become Facebook official for everyone to see. Soon enough, her daughter became pregnant, and Desiree did something that shocked everyone. She threw them a baby shower. In June of 2021, the 12-year-old girl went to a Tulsa hospital in labor, and alongside her was Juan, and he was very excited to become a father. But while they were at the hospital, police suddenly arrived and Juan was arrested. Juan was completely caught off guard because Desiree supported the relationship and she never acted like something was wrong with it. As investigators uncovered more details about what allegedly was happening inside of the home, both adults were arrested. Juan was sentenced to 20 years in prison and Desiree was sentenced to 15 years in prison after pleading guilty to child neglect and helping to enable the situation.
Just days before Christmas, he would go on to commit one of Scotland's most depraved murders. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Luciana Mora. The 4th of December 2014 was a regular day for the Mathieson family. They had went out and done a sport of Christmas shopping before returning to their home in beautiful Falkirk, Scotland, where they all shared a family meal together. While Mother Suzanne was getting herself ready, she was going to be going out for a works Christmas party this evening. Her husband Stephen would take their oldest son to his grandparents' house where he was going to be spending the night, leaving Stephen with just the 4-year-old son. 38-year-old Stephen was working as a car sales manager, and he was described as someone who was everyday, ordinary, and even a little bit boring. But unbeknownst to anyone else, over the past couple of years, Stephen had built up a crippling debt in order to fund his cocaine addiction. After waving his wife off to go and enjoy a night and putting his 4-year-old son to bed, Stephen started to abuse the substance, literally while his son is upstairs in bed. He would then hire a sex worker to come to his home on Springfield Drive, and she arrived at around about 11 p.m. This was Luciana Mora. Luciana was a 23-year-old Romanian mother of one who had only been in Scotland for around about 3 days. She arrived to the home and Stephen would guide her up to the bedroom where he began a frenzied attack on her, stabbing Luciana over 40 times. She had tried to fight for her life against this man, shown by all of her self-defense wounds, but she was unable to overpower him. After slaughtering Luciana, Stephen then texted his wife saying, quote, I'm sorry, XX. Stephen would contact another 2 sex workers who swiftly arrived to the home. When they arrived, immediately nothing seemed off. Stephen seemed normal, calm, and was just kind of sat in a chair in the sitting room. He guided both of the women upstairs to the bedroom, making them walk into the dark bedroom first. He closed the door behind them all, and when he flicked on the light, there was the body of Luciana lay on a blood-soaked bed and her entire body covered in stab wounds. Upon the women seeing this, they spun around on their feet and tried to run out of the door, but Stephen there was blocking them. He was holding a knife in each of his hands, taunting the women, threatening them. He would stroke the women with the knives and told them, "I've already committed 1 murder, I don't mind committing another 2 more." He ordered the girls to strip naked and dance for him, and terrified for their lives, they did exactly what he said. One by one, he would then rape both of these women on the very same bed where Luciana's body was lay. Stephen would then lead both of the women back downstairs, where he continued to assault and degrade them up until he became distracted for a moment. He heard a car pulling up outside, and thinking that it was his wife, he went to the window and peeked out, and the women saw this as the only opportunity that they could to get away. They stood up and made a beeline for the door, racing out, and they are both still completely naked. They would run away from Stephen, and he pursued them. He even got so close to one of the women that he was able to slash their leg with a knife. However, they were just that bit quicker than them. They were able to make it to a neighbour's house where they brayed on the door, and thankfully this neighbour let them in and rang the police for help. Stephen himself would then return home and called 911, telling the operator, quote, "I've been high on drugs and I've killed a prostitute. Tell the officers I'm not aggressive. I'm sitting on the couch. I had 2 other girls, but I've let them go." At the High Court in Livingston, Stephen Mathieson would plead guilty to the murder of Luciana Mora. For this, he would receive a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 22 years to serve.
First glance, it's doorbell footage of a mother and son leaving the house in the middle of the night. But when you look closer, it's like, is that a balaclava over her face? Before we get into this case, I've got a bunch of deep dives over on my podcast, The Bourne Investigation, and I post a brand new episode over there every single week. It was the 25th of October 2025 in Prestatyn in North Wales. Tristan Roberts was an 18-year-old living with his mum, Angela Shellis, and his brother Ethan. Now, his mum was a lovely woman, and she really did her absolute best to bring up those boys on her own. She worked as a teaching assistant at Real High School, and the students just loved her. But the same couldn't be said for one of her sons. Tristan was rebellious and was always getting sent out of class. He was always having detentions. He just had a bad attitude. He felt like the world was against him, and he really hated females. And if somebody was the poster boy for being an incel, honestly, it was Tristan. He totally withdrew from everything and everyone and spent all of his time online. He'd be talking to AI non-stop, developing more and more terrifying misogynistic views. He posted on forums about having urges to kill, and I guess it's really hard for these platforms to actually fully report every single person to the police, but it was kind of like this cycle where they would just block him from the website. He would make a new account, he'd post disturbing stuff again. Then one day he posted an image from the film American Psycho and wrote, "I got urges, it's gonna be some American Psycho shit, haha." Then he put, "She is gonna just vanish off the earth, now it's time." He'd quietly been collecting weapons, knives, hammers, and an axe. He developed this attitude of just kind of hating all women or girls. He didn't care. As a collective, he said he didn't trust them, despite it being a literal woman who raised him on her own. And I feel like Angela was basically the only woman he could take out his anger on. She was his only target. Angela had no idea, as she cooked and cleaned in their home, that upstairs, her son was plotting her murder. One evening he asked AI, what is a better weapon for murder, a hammer or a knife? And he quickly bypassed the security feature on AI because AI said, "No, I'm not going to tell you." And he said, "Oh no, I'm just writing a book." So AI was super helpful and helped him plan this whole thing. He decided now was the time to strike. He calmly left a voice note on a dictaphone stating, "This is Tristan Roberts. Tonight, I'm going to be Alex and I'm going to murder my mother with a sledgehammer." Hours later, another message. This time, Oh God, that was terrifying. That felt so crazy. That same day, police were called to a local nature reserve. As they approached the scene, they saw a trail of blood. 100-meter long trail leading to the dead body of Angela Shellis. Chillingly, gloves and a balaclava lay by her body. Now, initially detectives were horrified by this, thinking she must have been a victim of a terrifying killer that lay in the woods waiting to strike. But then they searched the family home and figured out it's even more disturbing than that. They saw grainy doorbell footage of both Angela and her son leaving the house just after 3 a.m. Now, who leaves the house with their son after 3 a.m? In the chilling footage, Tristan was guiding her as she struggled to walk. She walked with like a stick. That wasn't the only reason she was struggling. Tristan had captured his mum and held her hostage in the family bedroom. For 4 hours, he tortured her. He hit her with a hammer. He slapped her. He punched her. He strangled her. Now, on video, he was luring her to her death. Led her across a railway track, insisting that it was some kind of shortcut into town. I mean, God knows what he actually told her to convince her to walk with him. He then sat her on a bench and struck her over the head with a hammer as she begged. She screamed for mercy. Now, Angela had been growing really freaked out by her son's behaviour. She'd snuck into his bedroom a couple of times when he was out and found weapons hidden in his room. When police searched Angela's phone after her murder, they also saw a note she'd written. It was devastatingly foreshadowing in a way. She'd written that she wondered if she was safe in her own bedroom. Tristan ended up pleading guilty and was given just 22 years behind bars. Now, thankfully, that is a minimum. Do we think he is going to get out? I feel like they're always lenient when the criminal is young. Personally, I think at 18, you know full well right from wrong.
I mean, yeah, bad time to be a cruise ship, I would say that much. Between April 23rd and April 27, 2026, U.S. Customs and Border Protection boarded multiple cruise ships as part of a pre-planned intelligence-driven enforcement operation. On April 28th, Homeland Security investigations followed up with additional arrests. In total, 28 cruise members, some Disney cruise ship employees, were detained and interviewed. Out of those 28 people, 27 were confirmed to either be involved in the receipt, possession, transportation, distribution, or viewing of child exploitation material. Insane, right? A woman was a passenger on board on a Disney cruise ship and she was going about her day when she noticed that something was deeply disturbingly wrong. CBP agents were detaining several crew members still in their Disney uniforms, name tags still on. Quote, one of the employees in restraints was a head server who had been serving me and my family for the duration of my trip. We got to know him fairly well. He was actually serving us 45 minutes to an hour before he was in restraints. Families on board stood and watched, confused, nobody really saying what was going on. Nobody in any official capacity told them what was happening. And for nearly 2 weeks, it sounded like nobody would. But what was actually going on was a pre-planned operation to arrest those involved in a massive child essay material operation. The arrest targeted 28 individuals suspected to be involved based on information received from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. AKA, this wasn't random, it wasn't spontaneous, it was a coordinated, multiple agency operation built on evidence that had been gathered in advance. Federal investigators knew exactly who they were looking for before those ships ever docked. In total, 28 crew members arrested, 26 from the Philippines, 1 from Portugal, and 1 from Indonesia. At least 10 of the detained crew members were Disney cruise ship employees. 4 more were detained from a Holland American Line ship 2 days later on April 25th. The remaining ships have not been publicly named, but like I said, the operation went pretty much completely unexplained to the public for nearly 2 weeks. It was only when CBP released its full statement in early May 2026 that the real picture emerged, and by then, did they confirm that the individuals in custody would be charged and held awaiting trial? No. Actually, all 27 individuals found to be involved had their visas canceled and were sent back to their home countries. Let me just repeat that in case you missed it. 27 people confirmed by federal officers to have been involved in child exploitation material put on planes and sent home. None of them were charged in a U.S. court. None of them are sitting in federal prison. Not a single one is awaiting charges or awaiting trial. An attorney by the name of Michael Winkleman was openly baffled when he spoke to reporters about this, saying that they could have been charged in U.S. courts, but instead they were just sent home. He called this situation, quote, actually quite unique. So whether or not they will face prosecution when they go back to their home countries is unclear, and whether anyone is even going to pursue that has not been confirmed. Disney spoke out about this in a statement that reads, quote, we have zero tolerance policy for this type of behavior and fully cooperated with law enforcement. While the majority of these individuals were not from our cruise line, those who were are no longer with the company, end quote. Pretty generic I would say I'd call it the bare minimum. No acknowledgement, of course, of how this was allowed to happen. No outline of what screening changes were going to be made. Just don't worry, you guys, they don't work here anymore. Which is not only a slap in the face to every single family that was on board, given that those family were on one of the most trusted, most family-focused brands in the world. They were sharing a ship, sharing dining rooms, pool decks, public areas with their children, with people federal agents had flagged for child exploitation. They had no idea. They were never told. Also, massive slap in the face to anyone who may be connected in any way to any victim. And the hard truth is that this isn't the first time that we're hearing about something like this. This is part of a pattern. I don't even, yeah. I'm seeing this nowhere. Why is this not being talked about more? Because why are we pretending like this is normal? Are we literally okay? That's all. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for spending time with me today. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
When I was 12 years old, I found out that my grandma had killed and dismembered her own mother, and not in some vague, long ago family rumor type of way. I mean, she drowned her in her own bathtub, cut her body apart with a handsaw, hid pieces of her in cement-filled garbage cans, and kept them locked away in a storage unit in my hometown for 2 entire years. And somehow, the woman I'm describing has always only ever been a good grandma to me. I think that's the part that's honestly messed with my head the most, because growing up, my grandma was never scary to me. Some of my best childhood memories are with her. We did crafts together constantly. She was always kind to me, always patient, and always loving. So imagine being a kid and suddenly learning that the same grandma who always painted with you and always made holidays feel magical was also at the center of one of the most disturbing cases you have ever heard of. This case took place in my hometown of Yakima, Washington in the 90s. My great-grandma had recently had hip surgery, so my grandma was over there taking care of her. On this specific day, she was giving her a bath. During this visit, they somehow started talking about my grandma's childhood abuse. To put it shortly, my grandma experienced severe abuse of all kinds from many of her stepfathers growing up. According to my grandma, during this conversation, her mom admitted that she knew the abuse was happening the entire time, but she blamed her for it instead of the men abusing her. And after that conversation, something inside my grandma just snapped. My grandma drowned her in the bathtub, or I guess I should say my great-grandma somehow ended up dead in the water. And then my grandma went home without telling anyone. But over the next couple of days, according to her, she couldn't stop hearing her mom's voice, even though at this point she was already dead and had been for a very long time. She later said that that's why she focused so heavily on destroying her jaw and the dismemberment, because she needed her to, quote, stop talking. End quote. That line in the case files has literally haunted me ever since I read it. Like, it's been years. She eventually cut the body into multiple pieces and then put those body parts in garbage cans filled with cement. And then she hid these garbage cans in a storage unit in my hometown for 2 entire years. Meanwhile, she was convincing everyone in my family that she had spontaneously just run away with a wealthy man that she had just met. She even wrote letters pretending to be her. And I still have one of those letters. It's genuinely one of the creepiest things in my house. It's just sitting in my closet. Every now and then, I end up going back through the case files and getting completely fixated on the case all over again. There are so many disturbing details that never leave my brain. And honestly, I still have recurring nightmares about my grandma's house to this day. Like any bad dream that I'm having, for some reason, it's always taking place in my grandma's house. But I also want to make it clear that I'm not sharing this to shame my grandma or paint her as this evil monster. What she did is horrific, but I also fully believe that the years of trauma and abuse she experienced played a massive role in what happened. And I think that complexity is part of why this story has affected me so deeply for so long. It's also a huge reason why I care so much about true crime now. It's honestly why I'm a part of this podcast. It's victim-centered, and when have you ever seen a podcast with 2 hosts that both have victims and perpetrators in their family? But who knows, maybe one day I'll actually sit down and go through the case files and the letters with you guys if that's something you're interested in. Because my grandma's story is something I genuinely think about literally all the time. I don't know how not to. I wouldn't say it's a normal family experience by any means, but I guess just let me know if you guys want to know more. And I think I want to end this by asking a question. How many of you know someone who has murdered someone else, either in your family or not? I'm genuinely curious, and I know that I cannot be alone.
Her organs were removed during a mommy makeover. In March of 2024, 38-year-old Kaydell Brown flew from the UK to Turkey with her sister Leanne to undergo a mommy makeover at a clinic called Clinic Expert. The procedure procedures included a tummy tuck, liposuction, and a BBL. Before going into surgery, Cadell even took a selfie, and according to her sister, everything seemed completely normal. But while Cadell was in the recovery room, 3 staff members went to talk with Leanne, took her to a private room, and told her that there was complications and that her sister had passed away. The clinic claimed that they were unable to wake her up, and they believed that fat had traveled to her lungs during the surgery. Leanne was devastated, and they wouldn't even let her see her sister's body. Instead, they handed her an envelope with a refund, a ticket to go back home, and quickly ushered her out of the country. Once Cadell's body was brought back to the UK, her family discovered that large parts of her brain, heart, and lungs, and pieces of her intestines were missing. According to Leanne, they weren't able to do anything about this, and clinics are allowed to take out organs if they want to. Now, this case has people wondering if her organs were removed to be sold or to hide the true cause of death.
I'm sorry, what do you mean that Alex Murdaugh's conviction has been overturned? What do you mean that Alex Murdaugh's conviction has been overturned? Okay, so first, who is Alex Murdaugh and what did he do? If you don't know, where have you been? I have an entire TikTok covering his case. I also have an entire podcast episode talking about him. But if you're new to this case, here's what you need to know. Alex Murdaugh was a prominent attorney from a very powerful South Carolina legal dynasty, a family that had dominated the local court system for nearly a century. On the night of June 7th, 2021, his wife, 52-year-old Maggie, and his 22-year-old son, Paul, were found murdered on the family's sprawling hunting estate in South Carolina. Alex claimed that he had not been at home, that he had been away visiting his mother during the times of the murders. However, cell phone data and a video containing his voice placed him at the scene very shortly before the murders. Prosecutors accused Alex Murdaugh of carrying out the murders to earn pity and distract from financial crimes that he had done that would pretty much end his entire reputation. He was arrested in July of 2022. His trial began January 25th of 2023. He was convicted of 2 counts of murder and sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole. The world was watching. This quickly became one of the most talked about true crime cases in American history. And then today, everything changed. What happened today, May 13th, 2026? The South Carolina Supreme Court unanimously overturned Alex Murdaugh's murder convictions and ordered a new trial in a 5-0 ruling, meaning that every single person agreed that Alex Murdaugh's trial was tainted, therefore the convictions cannot stand. And the reason behind this had absolutely nothing to do with the evidence and everything to do with one woman and her book deal, Becky Hill. During the Alex Murdaugh trial in 2023, a woman named Rebecca Becky Hill served as the county clerk of court. Think of the county clerk as an official administrator of the courtroom, managing logistics, communicating with jurors, and keeping order in the courtroom, essentially. AKA, she was a person with a lot of trust. Jurors rely on the clerk. They interact with her constantly. She is, in many ways, kind of like a quiet authority figure in the courtroom, but the trust that she had, she did not use properly because a post-trial court found that Becky Hill made improper comments to jurors on the day that Alex Murdaugh testified. She told them this is an important day and this is an epic day, kind of telling them to pay special attention. She told them to watch Alex Murdaugh's body language as he testified in his own defense. One juror said that Becky Hill said things to him such as, quote, watch his actions, watch him closely, when Alex Murdaugh was taking the stand. Another juror said that Becky Hill told them, quote, they're going to say things that would try and confuse you. Do not let them confuse you or convince you or throw you off, end quote. So, to be clear about what this means in simple terms, the court clerk, who is supposed to be a neutral person with really no opinions, was suggesting to the jury that Alex Murdaugh was guilty before he even testified. She was suggesting that they should not believe him or his defense and suggesting that they find him guilty and convict him. And the issue there, one of the issues, is that in a ruling post-trial, it was found that Becky Hill was writing a book about the case and she allegedly wanted Alex Murdaugh to be found guilty so that her book would do well. The post-trial court's findings was that Becky Hill was, quote, attracted by the siren call of celebrity and had allowed her desire for the public spotlight to override her duty to the court, unquote. Her desire for the guilty verdict was, according to the court, directly tied to the book that she was planning on writing about the trial. A guilty verdict meant a better story meant better book sales. So Becky Hill was charged with perjury, obstruction of justice, and misconduct. The charges alleging that she made sealed evidence available to the media, lied under oath, and used her court position to promote her new book. She pleaded guilty in December of 2025 and she was sentenced to 3 years of probation. Now, what the Supreme Court has said is that, quote, Becky Hill placed her fingers on the scales of justice, thereby denying Murdaugh his right to a fair trial by an impartial jury. So there's going to be a retrial for his murder convictions now, and the court continued, quote, although we are aware of the time, money, and effort expended for this lengthy trial, we have no choice but to reverse the denial of Murdaugh's motion for a new trial due to Hill's improper external influences on the jury, end quote. In other words, they're saying, we know this is unfortunate, we know how much it costs, but we cannot allow a conviction to stand when the jury was manipulated. The entire foundation of the justice system, a fair trial before an impartial jury did not happen, therefore the convictions go out the window. Alex Murdaugh is not free, okay, thank God, because he's still serving time for his dozens of financial crimes, fraud, embezzlement, stealing from his own clients. So even if the murder charges somehow disappeared completely, entirely, he would not be a free man. But the convictions being overturned still do not mean that he is a free man. It means that the convictions are wiped away and the case has to start over. Alex Murdaugh is still in prison. He's still being charged with the murders of Maggie and Paul. He simply no longer has an active conviction on those charges as he now awaits for a new trial. I just can't believe this is going to trial again. This is so awful. It's so terrible for so many reasons that I feel like I don't even have to explain. But some of those reasons are the facts that the original crime scene was already deeply compromised, that police reportedly failed to collect various important pieces of evidence, that the whole mess of the trial and everything that came along with it has been already exposed to the public, and now people are just supposed to forget about everything that happened in that courtroom. Also, it was 3 years ago. Evidence ages, witnesses' memories fade, some people may no longer be available to be a witness, and everything legal aside, his convictions, in a lot of people's opinions, meant justice for his wife, a mother, and a person who was loved by a lot of people, justice for his son, a 22-year-old kid. The justice they received has been taken away, not because the evidence was wrong, not because Alex Murdaugh was proven to be innocent, but because of one woman. So today, for the first time since that guilty verdict, the legal system has handed Alex Murdaugh a window. This is a massive win for him, and it makes me dizzy. Yeah, I had a different video planned for today, but I woke up and saw those headlines. I'm baffled. And you guys are so quick. I already saw it all over my comment section. Anyway, we'll see what happens, I guess. Thank you for spending time with me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day and make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
I still remember exactly where I was when I first saw this video of Eliza Fletcher being abducted. She was out on her usual morning run in one of her favorite places, yet she never made it back home. After she was reported missing, this video footage surfaced showing her being approached by an unknown man, grabbed off the street, and then thrown into the back of his car. This is the disturbing murder of Eliza Fletcher, and it's stories like these that make me realize life is never permanent, and it can be taken from us in the blink of an eye. So let's talk about it. This is Eliza Fletcher. She was only 34 years old when she suddenly went missing while out on a morning run in 2022. Eliza was described as one of the kindest people you would ever meet, and she literally always saw the good in everyone. She was a kindergarten teacher in Memphis, Tennessee, an amazing mom to 2 little kids, and she was married to her best friend. Eliza was also a great role model, and one of her favorite things to do was run. She was an avid runner, and every single morning she would get up out of bed before the sun even rose to go on her usual morning run. And one of her favorite areas to run was near the University of Memphis. So in the early morning hours of September 2nd, 2022, that's exactly what she set out to do. She kissed her husband goodbye and took off for what should have been just another typical morning doing something she loved. But Eliza never made it home. She was supposed to be back home by 7 that morning, just like every other day. But when the clock struck 7:45 and she still wasn't back yet, her husband became really worried. It wasn't like her to not only be late like this, but also to not answer any of her husband's calls. So he immediately reported her missing to the police. But unfortunately, this is where the story takes a disturbing turn. Police started this investigation by thoroughly searching the area where she was last known to be running, near the University of Memphis. Eliza wasn't there, but what immediately stood out to investigators was a broken cell phone and a water bottle laying on the side of the road. This is when police started combing through all of the security footage from the university and other businesses and houses nearby, and they found something very startling. The footage shows Eliza running in the same area she always does, but then it shows her being approached by an unknown man. After a very clear altercation, the video shows this man grabbing Eliza off the street and then forcing her into the back of his dark-colored SUV. So this proved right away what police were dealing with. Eliza didn't just lose track of time. She was abducted, and no one knew it, but this was the very last time that she would ever be seen alive. So with the news of this video footage, Eliza's family put out a $50,000 reward for information leading to her whereabouts, and they were really hoping that she would be brought home safe. But just one day later, police made an announcement that they had arrested this man in connection to her disappearance. This is Cleotha Abston. He was 37 years old at the time this case was happening, and he has a very long criminal history dating back to the 1990s when he was just a kid. Police made the arrest after they traced his car, which turned out to be a dark-colored GMC Terrain to his house. I'll go more into his criminal history later, her, but Cleotha had only been a free man since 2020. He had spent the previous 20 years in prison after he kidnapped a prominent Memphis attorney at gunpoint in 2001. So this seemed like police were headed in the right direction, but Eliza was still missing, even though the suspect was in custody. This sparked a massive search for her, which involved police, tracking dogs, ATVs, and even helicopters. But nobody could find her, and as the days passed, the reality of what could have happened to her became more and more grim. Then, 3 days later, on September 5th, 2022, authorities were searching a South Memphis neighborhood when they noticed some out-of-place tire marks near an abandoned duplex. As they got closer to the building, they noticed a horrible smell of decay and decomposition, and sadly, just behind the building, they located Eliza's body. She had a gunshot wound to the back of her head, and she also had injuries to her right leg and a fractured jaw. Laying nearby was a trash bag containing the purple Lululemon running shorts Eliza was last known to be wearing. Police also found a pair of sandals nearby that confirmed what pretty much everyone already knew. The DNA found on the sandals belonged to Cleotha, and he was responsible for Eliza's abduction and murder. After reviewing security footage nearby, police were able to confirm that Cleotha and his car were in the area near the vacant duplex at 5:48 the morning Eliza disappeared. So not only did they have DNA and physical evidence linking him to the crime, they also had footage placing him at the crime scene. What's so scary to me is that with the timing of this, Eliza was likely killed only minutes after being abducted that morning. Police also found this eerie footage that shows Cleotha cleaning his car for 2 entire hours after killing Eliza. So needless to say, Cleotha was quickly arrested, and he was charged with first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping. He was then sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which he showed no remorse over. But what's crazy is what came to light while he was being held for Eliza's murder. So like I mentioned earlier, Cleotha had a lengthy criminal history that dated back to when he was just a kid. But in 2001, when he was 16 years old, he and an accomplice kidnapped a prominent Memphis attorney and tried to rob him. The attorney got super lucky when someone walked by, and this let him scream for help, and he was able to escape. But he really thought that if nobody had walked by like that, Cleotha was going to kill him. So for that crime, Cleotha was sentenced to 24 years in prison at just 16 years old. Fast forward to 2020. At this point, authorities said that he had already served 85% of his sentence, and they felt like that was good enough, so they released him back into society. He was released 4 years early, and guess what? Within 1 year, he would go on to brutally assault a woman who was 4 months pregnant. This was just 1 year before he killed Eliza. So in September of 2021, a woman met Cleotha on a dating app. At this time, she was 4 months pregnant, and she and Cleotha really seemed to hit it off. The plan was to meet up for a date at Cleotha's apartment so that he could cook her dinner. But when the woman arrived, the address he gave turned out to be an abandoned building. He then held her at gunpoint where he brutally SA'd her. The woman was able to escape, where she then immediately went to a hospital and a crisis center for SA. She had a rape kit done, which was then sent off to a state crime lab in Jackson, Tennessee. I mean, this woman did everything right in the wake of a horrific experience. Yet for some reason, nothing would be done about it. Police had Cleotha's name, his dating app profile, and even the rape kit DNA sample, so they should have been able to easily find him given his past 20 years in prison. But they chose not to act. They didn't do a damn thing. And the worst part, if it can get any worse, they didn't actually process the rape kit until September 5th, 2022, which is the day they found Eliza's body. They spin this as just a long delay in processing the SA kit, but this is completely unacceptable. Had they processed this in a timely manner, or even bothered to look into Cleotha when he was reported for SA in 2021, Eliza would still be alive. Had he served his full sentence for that 2001 kidnapping, again, Eliza would still be alive. She and Cleotha's first victim were failed by so many departments. It's horrible. So this news outraged not only Eliza's family, but even the entire community. Which, I mean, can you blame them? If they had done their jobs, Cleotha would have been off the streets immediately. He wouldn't have gotten the chance to hurt anyone else. After Eliza's death, the legislature passed a law requiring the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to issue a quarterly report on SA kit testing times, which I guess I'm thankful for because this is a huge deal and needs to be done promptly. But it's just sad that it had to take losing Eliza to make this change. change. It was a huge problem in Memphis that her death shed light into. The Tennessee governor even had to step in, and he ended up hiring 50 new lab techs, forensic scientists, and other staff to help with the huge backlog of SA kids. Eliza's murder didn't just destroy her family, it shook the entire community. Her students at school, her fellow teachers, and strangers like me who never even met Eliza, but who now will always remember her. My heart just breaks for her husband and 2 little babies who now have to live the rest of their lives without her. Every year on the anniversary of her death, an early morning running event is scheduled called Let's Finish Liza's Run, where runners follow the route Eliza took and her final steps. Eliza was a good person, and she didn't deserve what happened to her, much like all of the other women who were abducted and killed while just trying to do something they loved. Run.
Hey girls, it's Miss Fletcher. So before we go, I wanted to remind you of something that we do at St. Mary's that's so special and that I miss a lot. So I want to see if you can join in with me. We're going to sing This Little Light of Mine. Okay? Ready? This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. And I miss all of you girls so much. Bye.
This man builds a secret underground dungeon and keeps a girl down there for 24 years. And while she's down there, he forces her to have 7 of his children. So the man behind it all is this creepy old guy named Joseph Fritzl. He's 49 years old, living in Austria, and this man is an absolute monster. And even that's an understatement, because years earlier, he locked his own mother away in an attic for 20 years until she died. Then he broke into a nurse's home and assaulted her at knife point. So yeah, definitely not somebody who should have kids. But of course he does. He has 7 kids with his wife Rosemary, and inside their house he rules like a tyrant. He controls his wife, he punishes the kids for every little thing, and eventually they all just learn that his word is law. But when his daughter Elizabeth turns 11, he starts giving her the type of attention no father ever should. He punishes her harder than the other kids. He SAs her until eventually she just becomes fearful, quiet, and withdrawn. And by 16, Elizabeth is so fed up that she tries running away multiple times. But each time, police just catch her and bring her right back home. So Joseph decides if she won't stop running, he'll make it so that she can never leave again. And that's when he decides to build a literal dungeon in secret. He tells everyone he's just building a fallout shelter. And back then, a lot of people were making those, so nobody thought it was weird. And at first, he actually builds a normal looking shelter. Concrete walls, storage space, nothing that would raise eyebrows. But then little by little, he starts adding these secret doors that you wouldn't even realize were doors. Like one of them was hidden behind a shelf stocked with paint. And it wasn't just some secret Harry Potter door that you push on and it swings open. No, some of these doors weighed over 1,000 pounds and they would only open with a special key, while others open with passwords that only Joseph knew. So if you ever walked into his basement, you'd think, oh, this is nice. But behind those walls, past door after door after door, is a maze only he can open. And because Joseph was also an electrical engineer, he was able to wire the entire thing with lights, power, and ventilation all by himself. He even soundproofed the entire dungeon so nobody could hear the screams of his victim. And while he's doing all of this, nobody suspects a thing. So by August 1984, Joseph's project is ready. Now he just needs a way to lower his own daughter down there. So one day on August 28th, 1984, Joseph calls his daughter Elizabeth, who by then is 18 years old, down into the basement. He tells her he needs help holding a door while he puts it into place. But what she doesn't know is that this door is one of the last pieces to his trap. And as she's standing there, boom! Joseph suddenly presses a chemical-soaked cloth over her mouth until she passes out. He then drags her into the dungeon and seals the door permanently. And just like that, Elizabeth's world becomes a living horror for the next 24 years. Now that same day, when Elizabeth didn't come home at all, not to dinner, not to work, her mother Rosemary started to panic. So she straight up asks Joseph, where the hell is our daughter? And Joseph already had an excuse ready, one that he probably rehearsed a million times in his sick head. He tells her Elizabeth had simply ran away, that she'd gone off and joined some kind of cult. And the sad part is, it actually sounded believable. Because remember, Elizabeth had already tried to run away before. So Rosemary honestly thought maybe this time she finally went through with it. But still, she was a mother at the end of the day. She was still worried, so she filed a missing persons report. But that was a big problem for Joseph. He couldn't have cops doing all this digging. So at some point, he goes down to the basement and forces Elizabeth to write a letter saying that she's tired of the family and doesn't want to be found. Joseph then shows it to Rosemary and the police, and just like that, the search is dropped. And while the whole story is buying his cult story, Elizabeth is chained up to a bed in this pitch black room. And when I say pitch black, I mean it. There were no windows, no sunlight, no way for her to tell if it was morning or night. And the place itself was disgusting. It is freezing cold down there. The walls are damp. And whenever it rained, the water would leak down the walls and she would just wake up completely soaked. And not to mention, the smell was unbearable. There is mold covering the walls. Rats are crawling around everywhere. I mean, it was just disgusting. And she's chained up so tight, she can barely move even a foot. And Joseph, he comes down whenever he feels like it. Sometimes to beat her, to starve her, but mostly to SA her over and over and over again. But here's the part that makes me sick, more than what I already am. Like 6 or 7 months go by and Joseph finally takes the chains off. But not out of mercy or kindness. It was only because they were getting in the way when he was assaulted. Like, what an actual monster. And once the chains were off, things only got worse. He gets her pregnant for a second time, and when she's finally about to give birth, he doesn't even help her. He just hands her an old medical guidebook and says, figure it out yourself. So in 1988, down in that dark, moldy bunker, Elizabeth somehow manages to give birth to her first surviving child, a little girl named Kirsten. And Joseph didn't even come to check on her or the baby for 10 days straight. And I truly don't know how Elizabeth did it, but she managed to keep her baby alive all by herself. But another year later, in 1990, Joseph gets Elizabeth pregnant again. It's actually a boy this time, and she names him Stephen. So now both of these kids remain underground, never leaving those walls, which is just so incredibly sad. Oh my god. But even with all that, Elizabeth is still trying to make the cellar livable for them. She starts decorating the bathroom tiles with little drawings like a yellow snail, a purple octopus, stars, and suns. Things that the children have never seen in real life. She teaches them to read and write. She invents stories about pirates and princesses. Basically anything to make life feel less like hell for them. But Joseph made sure her life was still hell. He keeps on her brutally until another 3 years pass and he forces her to give birth to another little girl named Lisa. But this time Joseph does something so twisted. One day he forces Elizabeth to write a sick note. The note said, quote, "Dear parents, I'm leaving you my little daughter Lisa. Take good care of my little girl." And then Joseph takes the letter, he grabs the baby, takes her upstairs, and leaves her at the front of their house, making it look like Elizabeth abandoned her there. And that same morning, he goes to the front door, opens it, and goes, "Oh my god, look! A crying baby on the doorstep. Who could have put that there?" He shows the baby to Rosemary, and honestly, she's probably just relieved to know that her daughter is 1, alive, and 2, has a piece of her back. And eventually, Joseph even shows the baby to local authorities, which is actually kind of shocking, but he probably did that just to sell the story even harder. And to disgust you even more, Rosemary and Joseph end up adopting Lisa. So basically, the man legally adopting her is both her father and grandfather. Oh my god, that's disgusting. But Joseph is isn't done with Elizabeth. Oh no. He is just getting started, because about 2 years later, he gets Elizabeth pregnant again. This time it's another baby girl. And of course, Joseph pulls the same 6 stunts. He takes the baby upstairs, leaves her at the front door, and then just acts like Elizabeth left her there. And then another 2 years go by, and yup, he gets her pregnant again, this time with twin boys. But the conditions in that cellar were so horrific that one of the twins, little Michael, was born incredibly weak, like he could barely breathe. And Elizabeth is begging Joseph, like, please take him to the hospital, he is not going to make it. And Joseph, he just looks at her and coldly says, what will be, will be. Are you kidding me right now? That's basically him saying, it is what it is. That is insane. And sure enough, at just 3 days old, baby Michael ends up dying in Elizabeth's arms. And just when you think this man couldn't get any more evil, he proves you wrong. Joseph takes baby Michael's little body and in their furnace like it's nothing, and then he scatters the ashes in the garden behind his house. Okay, I think we need a second to breathe because this is a lot, so let's breathe. Okay, let's continue. So after Michael dies, Joseph doesn't care. Clearly, he just keeps right on abusing Elizabeth like nothing ever happened. And over the years, Elizabeth keeps giving birth again and again and again and again. In total, 7 children are born in that filthy cellar, all fathered by her own dad. And by the time the last one is born, Joseph is 67 years old. What he needs to do is find a freaking retirement home, preferably in a jail cell. Now here's the wild part though. 3 of those children were taken upstairs and adopted by Joseph and Rosemary. Their names were Lisa, Monica, and Alexander. So to the outside world, it just looked like Rosemary and Joseph kept mysteriously finding babies on their doorstep. And at this point, people are like, how many babies will Elizabeth drop off from this so-called cult? 1, maybe 2, okay, sure. But 3, yeah, no, it's looking very sketchy. But every single time, Joseph covers it with one of those fake letters. And somehow, for whatever reason, people just keep on believing it. And just to really put it in perspective how much time has passed, Elizabeth's first baby, Kirsten, is 15 years old. And Elizabeth herself is already 36. I mean, she's already spent half her life in that dungeon. That's genuinely insane if you really think about it. But to add more into how evil this man is, he would take pictures of the 3 kids he adopted doing totally normal stuff. They'd be swimming in a pool, playing in the snow, blowing out candles at their birthday parties. Then he'd carry those photos downstairs and shove them in the face of the kids who are stuck in the cellar. He'd be like, see this? Look at what your brothers and sisters get to do. It was his sinister way of reminding them, that's a life you'll never have. You will never see the sun, you will never make friends, and you will never go outside. But listen, I could sit here all day and unfold story after story of the horrific things Joseph did to Elizabeth and the kids. But if I keep going, we're gonna be here for the next 24 years, right alongside them, because that is exactly how long it lasted. So let's fast forward to the moment this evil, deranged maniac slips up and finally gets caught. It all starts when one day in 2008, Joseph suddenly has a big problem. Elizabeth's oldest child, Kirsten, who is now 19 years old, gets really sick because after spending her entire life underground with no sun, no fresh air, no doctors, her body just gives up and her kidneys start failing. And Elizabeth knows if she doesn't get medical help right now, she is going to lose her daughter. So she gets on her knees and literally starts begging him. She's saying, please, for once in your life, just take her to the hospital or she's gonna die. And that's when Joseph actually freezes for a second, because for the first time in 24 years, he doesn't know what to do. Normally, he would just whip up one of those fake letters, drop a baby at the doorstep, and pretend that Elizabeth left it there. But this is different. Kirsten isn't a baby. She's 19 years old, and her body is so malnourished and abused that there is no way to explain this. And if she shows up to the hospital, doctors are gonna take one look at her and be like, what the actual fuck is going on here? But that's not even Joseph's only problem. If Kirsten dies down there, he can't just make her disappear like he did to baby Michael. She's too big to hide, too risky to move. And where the hell would he even put her body without making people ask questions? So no matter what Joseph does, he's screwed. So he comes up with this dumb plan that in his sick little head he thinks is going to explain everything. He decides to double down on his old story, the whole cult thing. So he goes back to the dungeon and forces Elizabeth to write another letter. And in this letter, she's supposed to say, oh hey, by the way, Kirsten is my other daughter. She's like 19 years old. I raised her all by myself in the cult, and now surprise, she got really sick. So I'm gonna drop her off here. It's so stupid, I know, but that's exactly what he does. And the second Kirsten shows up at the hospital, hospital, doctors are like, yeah, no, this is not adding up at all. She is pale as a ghost. I mean, her skin looks like she'd never seen sunlight before. Her teeth are completely destroyed because remember, she's never been to a dentist. And on top of that, she has zero medical history. It's like she doesn't even exist in the system. So doctors immediately pick up the phone and call the police. And they're like, listen, the story that this man is selling us right now, a quote, a letter, we're not buying it. And police agree. So they're like, okay, where's the mother? Because if Kristen really came from a cult, if this is really Elizabeth's kid, then we need to see her right now. And at that point, Joseph starts sweating and he's shaking because he knows if he doesn't bring Elizabeth, they're going to dig until they find her. So in his twisted little brain, the only move he thinks he has left is to bring Elizabeth up from the dungeon and pray he can manipulate her into lying for him to the police. But Joseph still has another big problem. He can't just bring Elizabeth upstairs without people asking questions. So he tells everyone this BS story that Elizabeth has quit the cult and come home to take care of her sick daughter. And once that's done, he goes down into the cellar, and for the first time in 24 years, he brings Elizabeth and her 3 other children outside. He then drags her straight into the police interrogation room, still trying to control every single move she makes. The whole time, he's whispering into her ear, telling her the same poison he's been telling her for years. Do not say a word. Nobody will believe you. And if you try to talk, I will take your children. So she's sitting there in front of these detectives, completely silent and terrified. And these detectives are looking at her and they're like, she is not okay. So they decide to make a smart move. They take Elizabeth and they move her to a private room without Joseph. And that's when they basically tell her, we suspect that you're the one abusing Kirsten. And if you don't explain yourself, you're going to be the one to end up in jail. And that just breaks her. Elizabeth just bursts into tears because she would never hurt her children. But she also can't escape the control that Joseph has drilled into her head for the past 24 years. And even in that room with him gone, surrounded by all these detectives, she still feels his presence, like he's right behind her, breathing down her neck. But eventually, through all the tears, she begs the police for one single promise. I will tell you everything, every horrific detail, only if you promise me I will never have to see my father's face again. And right then and there, the police assure her she won't. And once she hears that, Elizabeth lets it all out. The cellar, the maze of doors, the chains, the abuse, the children born underground, everything. And the detectives are just sitting there like, what the fuck? So immediately, Joseph Fritzl is finally arrested on the spot. They throw him into custody and charge him with everything under the sun. False imprisonment, incest, SA, murder for the baby that died, all of it. And when it finally goes to trial, Joseph walks into the courtroom all smug, like he's still in control. But then Elizabeth shows up too. And to protect her identity, she's wearing a wig, which means that Joseph didn't even realize it was her at first. She looks right at him, and the second they lock eyes, he freezes. He knows that's her now, and all of that fake confidence just drains out of him. Because for the first time ever, he knows he does not have power over her anymore. And that's when the court hits him with a verdict: life in prison, no parole. And just like that, his narcissistic, evil, maniac, deranged, psychopathic, manipulative, I mean, I can go on, he is never walking free again. That is what I love to hear. Lock him up. Group hug to Elizabeth and all her children. They deserve eternal peace. And group hug to you guys as well. I love you. I will see you in my next video. Mwah. This girl and her boyfriend were being stalked in a way that doesn't even sound real. Not just a few prank texts here and there, we're talking over 350,000 messages. And the person behind it is actually going to blow your mind. So the story starts with this girl named Lauren Licari. She was 13 when she started dating this boy at her school, and his name is Owen McKenney. By the time they hit high school, they were still dating, which is pretty surprising being that they're so young. And so in their small town in Michigan, everyone considered them the golden couple. Everything seemed perfect until one random night in 2020, Lauren gets this message from an unknown number. It just says, Owen is breaking up with you. And she's like, what? Who is this? And then another follows right after saying, it's obvious he doesn't want you anymore. He wants me. At first, Lauren just rolls her eyes. She figures it's just some random classmate trying to stir up some drama and get in the way of her relationship. Except the text messages don't stop. They just get nasty. One's like, you're too ugly for anyone to love. Another one says, Owen's cheating on you. Everyone knows. And then the worst one, you should just end yourself, bitch. The world doesn't need you. It's nonstop text messages day in and day out, just flooding this girl's phone and trying to ruin her life like they've got nothing nothing else better to do. And it's not just mean, it's calculated. They call her a terrible girlfriend, a crappy athlete, a total nobody. It's like they're trying to tear this girl apart piece by piece. Lauren and Owen are freaking out. They're like, who hates us this much? This has got to be a prank, maybe from somebody at school. And then out of nowhere, it just stops for months. And they're finally like, yes, it's over. Whew. But then September 2021 hits and these text messages came roaring back. This time it's constant, morning, noon, night, during class, during practice. I mean, it doesn't let up. And now they're not just mean or nasty, they're disgusting as hell. Stuff like, you're not pretty enough, not skinny enough, Owen's just pity dating you, you're nothing. But here's where things start getting weird, because the stalker knew things, like super specific stuff. They would call Lauren by her nickname Lo, which was really off-putting because only her close friends and family would call her that. They'd mention what she was wearing to school, how her hair looked, how many points she would score at her basketball game. It's like someone's watching her every move. So at this point, Lauren and Owen are like, okay, this has to be somebody that we know. The stalker would text Lauren things that made her question her relationship with Owen. Like one message said that Owen was gonna meet up with the stalker at a hotel room and saying that he doesn't want you, just dump him. And to make it worse, they start targeting Owen too. He starts getting messages saying, Lauren's ugly, she's a bad girlfriend, a waste of time, break up with her already. But Lauren and Owen still kept dating, and so these stalkers started trying to make them jealous. The messages they were getting turned extremely inappropriate. Like the stalker would send really inappropriate stuff, saying things like what she wanted to do to him in ways that I can't repeat on here unless I want to get my video taken down. But let's just say it wasn't PG, not even close. So by this point, the messages aren't just annoying, they're exhausting. They both just wanted to stop, to finally know who's behind it. So the stalker came up with a deal. They'd reveal who they were only if Owen admitted that he hated Lauren. And Owen, desperate for answers, he plays along and he types out, fine, I hate her, and sends it off. But the second he does, the stalker screenshots it, forwards it to Lauren, and texts, see, he really does hate you, you're nothing, he's telling the truth. But Lauren and Owen aren't stupid. They already knew this person was trying to play the both of them, so they just blocked the number. But then boom, another number pops up, so they just block it. And then once again, another number pops up. And they repeat this process over and over again. It was like the stalker had a drawer full of burner phones. But then it gets next level creepy. The stalker starts making fake social media accounts using real photos and names of Lauren's friends to keep the harassment going. It's messing with their heads so much. And just before Christmas, they decide they cannot handle it and break up. Mind you, they have been together for 2 years now. They're each other's first loves, so it was not easy at all. But you'd think, okay, this is what the stalker wanted, so they're done now. But no, right after they break up, the stalker messages them again. They tell Lauren, Merry Christmas, you're done, we win, you're ugly, and a Owen wants a popular girl, not your or nothing. Like, do y'all understand how hurtful getting messages like that every single day is? So at this point, Lauren's had it. She's over it, and she starts texting the stalker, please just leave me alone. But of course, it doesn't work. So more than a year into this whole nightmare, she goes to the one person she trusted more than anyone, her mom, Kendra. Now, Kendra, she is super involved. She's Lauren's basketball coach, softball coach. She's always there, running drills, cheering from the sidelines, total mom goals. So when Lauren spills everything about this online bully, Kendra's like, yeah, no, we're handling this right now. Ain't nobody gonna get away with doing this to my daughter. Clock it. So she marches straight to the principal and demands action. And to their credit, they actually take it pretty seriously. They launch a full investigation, pulling in a bunch of Lauren's friends, asking who's got beef, who's jealous, who likes Owen. They even went as far as checking surveillance cameras to see if anyone's acting weird, but they found nothing. And most schools would have stopped right there, like, okay, we tried our best, we just ignored and blocked the number. But not this one. They were like, yeah, no, we're going to find this creep no matter what. So they call in the big boys, the police. The sheriff pulls up, so it's no longer high school drama, it's a full-on criminal investigation. So all hands are on deck right now, including Kendra. This woman is not messing around. She hands over 50 pages of research, screenshots, text messages, everything and anything she could to help and find the stalker. But even with the cops involved, the stalker still does not stop. They just keep sending nastier texts, and like I said, they are so disgusting and vile, I can't say them on here. So the police decide, let's dig deeper. They go through thousands of text messages. They end up filing warrants for Instagram, Facebook, TikTok to release data from Lauren and Owen's phone, so that way they could eventually do a full digital sweep, which you think would scare the stalker off, right? Like, oh my god, the cops are digging through everything, I'm done. But no, in fact, the stalker actually gets cocky. They text Lauren saying, the cops said it's not me, they're not even on to me. Like, they're just straight up taunting her. But months go by and police end up hitting a wall, because whoever this was, they are hiding behind burner accounts and VPNs. So the case gets kicked up to the big boys, the FBI. They bring in their cyber experts. I mean, mean, these are the guys who spend their days hunting down pro hackers. So they're pretty confident they can handle a couple of teenagers hiding behind a VPN, which, by the way, it's basically a software that makes it look like you're somewhere you're not. But the FBI, they blow right through that. I mean, come on, it's the FBI, criminal minds. If you know, you know. It's child's play for them. And after a little while, they were actually able to trace back everything to one IP address. So with that, they locked down the exact location being used to send all of these text messages. And after 2 whole years of psychological torture, nearly 350,000 messages, this stalker's identity is about to be revealed. And it turns out the device belonged to... Are you ready? Please hold on to your seat because this is about to blow your mind. 3, 2, 1. It was Kendra, Lauren's own mom. The woman who birthed her. The woman who Lauren would cry on her lap whenever she would get sad because of these messages. The woman who was so involved in this investigation. I know, we need to let this sink in. I was honestly just as shocked, and I'm re-shocked because what? So now that the FBI was able to figure out who was behind the messages, now it's time to get a warrant to confiscate every device in their house. Because sure, the messages are linked to Kendra, but it doesn't necessarily prove that she's the one sending them. So with a warrant in their hand, they show up to Kendra's house and she's outside just taking the trash out very casually. And the cops are like, we need to talk. So the officers pull her inside and straight up tell her, we tracked all of those disgusting, life-ruining messages right back to you. And the look on her face kills me because she knows she's cooked. But of course, she still tries to deny it, which only lasted like 10 seconds, but still, what are you doing? Come on. And while this officer is laying it all out on the table, there is another walking around the entire house searching for everything, phones, laptops, tablets, anything she could have been using to destroy her own kid's life. And this is the part where my blood just boiled. The officer tells her, we're gonna have to tell Lauren and your husband Sean. And Kendra, this woman, she goes, do we have to? Do we have to? Ma'am, you have been tortured for years, and your main concern is whether you have to admit it. Priority list is not there. So after a few minutes, they call Lauren over. She sits down and they tell her everything. And this poor girl, like, you can see it in her face. She is shocked, but she just shuts down. She doesn't react, but you can tell that she's shattered. She just doesn't know what to do with this information. And then Kendra, she has the audacity, the absolute nerve to stand up and hug her. She's rubbing her shoulder, playing with her daughter's hair like she's comforting her. That is manipulation 101. You hurt this person and then you swoop in and try to save them. It's disgusting. And then they tell Sean, and that's when even more of Kendra's secrets just start spilling out. Because everybody's wondering these same 2 questions. Why would she do this? And how the hell did she even have time? Well, it turns out she had the time because she was jobless. Everybody thought she was working, even Sean, even Lauren, but no. She had gotten fired like a year back and kept it a secret. So while she was sitting at her computer pretending to work, she was actually crafting thousands of fake messages to torment her daughter Lauren and boyfriend Owen. And after all of that, Kendra is finally arrested, put on trial, and could potentially go to jail for 35 years. And while in custody, she starts pouring out all of these excuses as to why she did what she did, telling investigators that she only did it to hopefully bring out the real stalker. Like, she thought by sending fake messages, she could somehow expose whoever was actually tormenting Lauren in the beginning. Which makes absolutely no sense because you were sending messages to your daughter telling her to end herself. Then she says it just got out of hand, like she only meant to send a few, and then this went on for 2 years. There is no excuse to cover that. And then, this is the cherry on top, she asks the cop to keep it quiet. Apparently, she doesn't want the other parents to know. Can you imagine causing this much emotional trauma to multiple families, and your only worry is whether the other parents will gossip about you? That is truly despicable. But the real question everybody still has is why? It just makes no sense. Because this wasn't just some stranger in the dark, this was her mom. And so prosecutors actually came up with a theory. Lauren and Kendra had always been like extremely close. Lauren was a total mama's girl. She would tell her everything about school, sports, friends, boys. For every problem, every little detail, she always went to her mom. But then Owen came along and suddenly Lauren isn't venting to mom anymore. She was venting to her boyfriend. She was spending her free time with him, not her. And prosecutors believe Kendra hated that. She wanted to be number 1 again. Maybe losing her job played into it. Maybe being fired bruised her ego and left her with too much time on her hands. But for whatever reason, she created this nightmare. Not to necessarily break Owen and Lauren up, but to create a problem so massive, so terrifying, that Lauren would have no other choice but to come running back to her mom. And in a sick way, it actually worked. The harassment consumed Lauren's life. Her grades were slipping, her friends cut her off, she was paranoid, exhausted, completely falling apart. And every time she felt like drowning, she turned straight to her mom. Kendra got to play the hero, the savior, the protector, when really the entire time she was the one pouring gasoline on the fire. But I'm sorry, I don't really buy this neat little theory prosecutor sold. That whole she just wanted her daughter to miss her again. Yeah, nah, miss me with that. Because when you actually look at the text messages, the motive feels so much darker. Kendra wasn't obsessed with being needed by Lauren. She was obsessed with Owen. Think about it for real. These text messages weren't just, oh, Lauren's a bad girlfriend, yada, yada, yada. They were gross, way over the line. Like telling Owen what she wanted to do with him and then showing up at his games that Lauren wasn't even at. And then she texts Owen saying, see, she doesn't care enough to show up for you. Meanwhile, she's in the bleachers watching him play. Tell me that's not obsession. And let's not forget, she is destroying her own daughter at the same time. Calling her ugly, saying that her body looks like a boy, telling her to unalive herself. You don't write that to your own kid unless something way deeper and darker is going on. Because if all you wanted was attention, you didn't need to drag her body into this. You didn't need to push her towards suicide, and you damn well didn't need to her boyfriend. But even with all of this, here is how everything played out in court. She was facing decades, like 35 years if it went to trial. But she takes a plea deal. They had thousands of pages of messages directly tied to her devices. No jury on earth could have ever bought her excuses. So she pleads guilty to 2 counts of charging a minor. And just like that, charges of using a computer to commit a crime, gone. Obstruction of justice, gone. Her max drops from 35 years to 10. And when she finally speaks in court, she's like, I'm sorry, I feel so much remorse. I never want to hurt anyone again. Oh, please. It honestly sounded like she was downplaying it, like she was minimizing what she did. Bro, you didn't just hurt your family. You torched your daughter's entire reality. You wrecked Owen, you wrecked his family, and you wrecked every single other person in that town who had to deal with the fallout. Like, who does that? So what does she actually get? 19 months to 5 years. And she only served like a year and a half. So by August 8th, 2024, she's released. That's it. That's the punishment. After nearly 2 years of torment, after sending thousands of messages, after telling her own child to she serves less time than it takes to get through high school. I think we can all agree, that's insane.
This is the story of Tanya and Leon Tripp. LaTanya Janelle Carwell, which everybody just called her Janelle, was born on April 17th of 2001 in Palestine, Texas. Her family relocated to Augusta, Georgia shortly after she was born. And academically, Janelle was a great student. She excelled in science and math, aspiring to become a nurse or a doctor one day. And outside of school, she was very active in her local church, singing in a choir, participating in community outreach programs. She was known for mentoring younger students in her church youth group, and she actively participated in charity drives. Solid rap sheet. Janelle's mother, Tanya, informed the family that she was battling cancer, and being that Janelle is the oldest, Tanya relied on her the most. Janelle would cook, she would clean, she would make sure the house was in order, and everything was going smoothly until April 2015. That's when Leon Tripp was released from prison. Tanya and Leon had been knowing each other since they were teenagers. He had got locked up in 2009, and somewhere along that line, Tanya became his pen pal. All that writing turned into a relationship while he was in prison. Then the two got married while he was still in prison. So when he was released in April of 2015, he moved right to Augusta, Georgia, with Tanya and her children. In the beginning, Leon presented himself as a supporting partner and a father figure to Janelle, but that quickly changed when Janelle's actions started to shift at school. She started turning her assignments in late. Sometimes she wouldn't turn her assignments in at all. Her friends said that she wouldn't even talk about what was going on in her home anymore. In August of 2015, just 4 months after his release, the police was called on Leon. He had choked Tanya during a domestic dispute. Now, it's unclear who made this call, but he still didn't get put out that house. You literally just got out of jail. On April 18th, 2017, Tanya reported her husband and her daughter missing. She told the police that Leon got a call in the middle of the night from a friend that lives in Clarks Hill saying that his car broke down, and Leon asked Janelle to help him with his friend's car. And the two went to Clarks Hill, but she said they never returned. As the investigation is beginning and the search team is gathering, Tanya decides to go on Facebook Live and let everybody know that she's been battling with lung and brain cancer. She asks for funds to help find her husband and her daughter. Community volunteers search wooded areas and abandoned properties. They even had helicopters. In the following days, They brought out the cadaver dogs, but still no sign of Janelle and Leon. Tanya was making conflicting statements. One minute she'll say that Janelle left willingly with Leon. Then she would say that she was concerned for Janelle's safety with Leon. But suspicions started to rise. The neighbors told the police that they would hear Tanya and Leon arguing, fussing, and fighting all through the night leading up to the two disappearance. A witness even seen Leon loading up his truck the night before the two disappeared. That same truck was found on April 26, abandoned just a mile away from their home. The truck was taken in for processing and yielded no information about the whereabouts of the two, but the cell phone data showed that these two never even made it to Clark's Hill. As their disappearance is spreading, police are getting tips of sightings of Leon in Atlanta, which is about 2 hours from West Augusta. He was actually on surveillance camera at a gas station or a stop and go, but Janelle was not with him. When the police actually seen him and seen that he looked like he was unharmed, alive, and well, they hit him with a kidnapping charge. Come to find out, Leon had made 2 or 3 trips back and forth while the police were actively looking for him. So now they really looking at Tanya sideways like, and you ain't seen him? Now, Tanya still was doing interviews and expressing her concerns about her missing daughter and her missing husband. Somebody even had asked her, do you think that they were in a secret relationship? And Tanya responded, all of this prettiness, and you think he will want to run away with our daughter? Come on now, that's stupid. That was a crazy thing to say. The kidnapping charge was May 1st, and the case kind of went cold after that. All the leads were dead ends, and knowing that Leon was traveling back and forth from Atlanta to Augusta, they started to focus more on Tanya. May 23rd, 2017, the U.S. Marshals in Atlanta decided to do a manhunt, an extensive search for Leon, and they found his ass at a U-Haul facility, but he wasn't by himself. Guess who was sitting passenger side? Tanya Tripp. They were both taken into custody, and Leon said that he never harmed Janelle. He said no, they didn't go to Clark's Hill. They instead went to Atlanta, but he gave Janelle money to get back on a bus to head back to Augusta, and that was the last time he seen her. Tanya said the only reason why she was with Leon is because she was looking for her daughter. She said that she was going to tell the police where he was. Mind you, the U-Haul truck was filled up to the brim with all of their shit. Since they didn't have enough evidence to charge Leon and Tanya with the disappearance and murder of Janelle because they didn't have her body, they charged Leon with kidnapping and they charged Tanya with hindering the apprehension of a criminal. Almost 1 year later, behind an abandoned house in Richmond County, Georgia, in a shallow grave, was the remains of Janelle. She was found by somebody about to clean up and rebuild on the property. Her body was so badly decomposed, they really don't know how she died. They were saying asphyxia because it was a rope found next to her body or near her body. She only had a bra on when she was discovered. She died on her 16th birthday. Leon's charges went to first-degree murder and Tanya's charges went to second-degree murder. Their trial got delayed for so long due to COVID and a bunch of other issues. But in June of 2020, more evidence came out that Tanya and Leon hired a hitman to kill Janelle on 3 occasions, in September and December in 2015, and one other time in October of 2016. The trial finally started in February of 2026, and it was text messages between the two how they were going to handle Janelle. It was also evidence on the shovels in the back of Leon's truck. It had the same soil on it as where Janelle was found. On top of all of the other mountain of evidence they had on these two, they make me sick. They were both sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And I just want to know why. What was the reason? Why was she singled out like this? Because you had other children too. What kind of a piece of shit mother are you? But let's look at his record and why he was in jail in the first place. He was married to a woman named Chantel Tripp. She said that he was very abusive in their marriage and he would threaten the lives of her and her children. In 2002, he was charged with aggravated stalking and cruelty to children. He was sent to jail. In 2009, he violated his probation and got sent back to jail. Both of these charges was from his first wife. And then Tanya, you gonna marry him. He got out and he moved with you and your children. You pick me ass bitch. Chantel, I'm glad you got up out that jam. Tanya, bitch, I hope you rot.